important part of the way forward. In terms of Trinidad and Tobago, the division of culture has always been shifted around. And I think that the dedicated establishment of not just a Ministry of Culture, but a Ministry of Arts and Multiculturalism is symbolic at the least. And the previous government established a Standing Committee on Business Development, which identified 7 sectors for strategic economic diversification, including music and entertainment and film. And both these sectors ended up in the establishment of 2 special purpose companies, the Trinidad Entertainment Company and the Trinidad and Tobago Film Company, both of which fall under the scope of the Ministry of Trade, which possibly creates further disconnections in overarching cultural policy. So the basic value chain is that you have to look at creative activity and being derived from creative capital as very different from traditional goods and services. Unlike traditional capital, creative capital tends to have increasing returns. The more you engage creative resources, is the more their productive capacity increases. And if you separate the idea of creation from production, you can explain this resource curse or trade imbalance in that the region has a high comparative advantage in creation, but we have limited capacity in production. We have not been able to reach critical mass in overcoming inertia in commercialization, and we have structural deficiencies in distribution. So my idea is that you can have overall cultural policy linking together all elements of the value chain, but you have intellectual property policy addressing creation, industrial policy measures, as well as the operations of these special purpose companies affecting production and commercialization, and utilizing ICT policy on the distribution side of things. So it's important to note that technological change has affected the value chain in all its elements. And what's important is for us to embrace these opportunities brought on by technological and cultural change. Skip back this. So, in terms of intellectual property policy, first of all, I believe that we need to demonstrate to policymakers that the roots of intellectual property rights are in their functions as market-based incentives for creation and innovation, which is the economic view, rather than strictly proprietary rights issues. On this basis, the Intellectual Property Office should provide support services which reduce transaction costs in the commercial exploitation of IPRs, including assistance services in licensing negotiation and providing alternative dispute resolution services. Because when you have economic policy being administered through a legal mechanism, you create a deadweight loss and you create a barrier to entry through legal costs. And I believe that litigation is a deadweight loss, and it should only be reserved when the commercial stakes are high enough to justify the legal and judicial costs. Additionally, the IPO should provide guidelines to employees, both in the private and public sector, for the inclusion of fair and balanced IPR clauses in employment contracts for the protection of creative workers. We also need to strengthen institutions for administration of copyright matters. Our Intellectual Property Office administers both industrial property, that is patents and trademarks, as well as copyrights, although in some countries you have a separate copyright office, often under the Ministry of Culture. I believe that there needs to be a strengthening of the copyright office under the IPO, and at the least making sure that they're equipped with the relevant resources. A possible idea here is to amend the Patent Act to allow the IPO's excess revenues from patent and trademark applications and filing fees to finance an innovation and creativity fund instead of being remitted back to the general consolidated fund. Importantly, there's a need for effective public education on the importance of IPRs. Also, we need possibly the regulation of collecting societies. The small market size of Trinidad and Tobago and the density of works and high rates of creation provide a difficult environment for effective copyright administration. Possible provisions include requirements to authorize to operate a collection society, ensuring that market needs are satisfied and inefficient competition does not undermine the viability of industry. We also could promote more transparency and accountability through requirements to publish bylaws, distribution methodologies, repertoire and membership listings, as well as tariff schedules. You can also establish schedules of statutorily defined royalty rates to prevent price discrimination and manage the types of licenses for various types of uses. Additionally, support should be given to the industry to form a related rights society, if such is deemed viable, which can proportionately increase revenue capture. I'll skip by this because this is really a collateral issue on the consumption side. To strengthen production, we can use Industrial policy measures such as removal of import duties on capital goods for creative production, which generally stand at about 30% right now. Possible introduction of an accreditation system for creative economy workers, facilitating workshops of training and skills development, establishing public cultural centers in local communities, and classification of royalty revenues as tax-exempt forms of income. We also need to facilitate access to financial funding, not only through the state, but encouraging partnerships with the private sector and financial institutions. Strengthening commercializations, we need to reevaluate the mandates of these special purpose companies to ensure that operations achieve maximum returns. The current mandates are very broad, and limited budgets make effective financing of development initiatives very difficult. It's my contention that special purpose companies should focus on strengthening capacity and commercialization, while more centralized and specific industrial policies aim to strengthen capacity in production. Can develop networks between value chains to maximize value added, introduce an online platform for events promotion and artist booking, what I call a pan-regional sonic bids model. We can provide an online space for advertising and strengthening local media presence, and providing subsidies for merchandising and brand development. Special purpose companies can also provide legal and administrative support services traditionally provided by private entities. Specifically, I believe that they should administer various tracking codes and traditional codes assigned by publishers. This ensures that products are export ready and distribution can be tracked effectively in foreign markets. Looking at the ICT side now, we have to look at what opportunities we have from our telecommunications liberalization. If you look at ICT penetration in Trinidad, our mobile phone penetration is off the chart. It's about 138, meaning for every inhabitant of Trinidad, you have 1.4 cell phone subscriptions, which means that the anticipated entry of a third mobile provider and a remarkable high subscription rate suggests that future competition will be based on value-added services and applications such as digital content delivery. Copyright collectives should be encouraged to pursue blanket license arrangements with these service providers, while the competitive environment is ideal. Additionally, there are various things we can do by encouraging domestic markets, by regulation of broadcasting markets, introduction of local content rules, regulation of ownership, and introduction of a public broadcasting service. Importantly, e-commerce is a requisite building block, and we need a greater push for the establishment of an e-commerce framework in the region. In Trinidad and Tobago, the Data Protection Bill and the Electronic Transaction Bill both lapsed earlier this year and need to be reintroduced accordingly. ICTs can also be used to preserve heritage, for example, digitizing the contents of the National Archives. This is about local content. I urge you to read this if you check it out again. And then my last point is we can apply creative resources to other developmental objectives. For example, education reform. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has recently launched an initiative to provide laptop computers to new secondary school students. We need to maximize the educational benefits of this initiative. There should be an accompanying drive to develop learning systems which use digital platforms. So why not establish a working group to author digital text specifically tailored to CXC and CAPE syllabi, develop simple software applications and digital learning tools tailored to students' needs. These working groups can license text and applications to the government, who supply these applications to students, remembering that digital means zero marginal cost. This creates royalty payments to authors based on distribution and decreased reliance on physical materials, making access to quality public education more equitable. In terms of articulating a development strategy, we need to streamline the various initiatives across the various state sectors and ensure that we create an environment where new business models can emerge. In conclusion, we need to dismantle a perception that culture and commerce are somehow incompatible, and we need to embrace the new opportunities brought about by an evolving landscape where culture and technology will always interface. So I urge you to take my email address. If you're interested in furthering these discussions and engaging in discourse, please feel free to do so. Thank you.